Welcome back to the show, everybody. You are listening to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast, and today we are going to dive into something that we've gotten some requests about because I think everybody does it a little differently. It's just what works for you, and that is, Shelby, what's in our tack room?
What is in our tack room, Katie?
Yeah, sometimes it's a surprise to us what's in our tack room. But we're going to talk a little bit today about the importance of organizing your tack and how it makes you more efficient in going into sessions, and it makes your volunteers' lives easier, and ours as staff. So, you were the equine operations manager before you were program director. Did you have a integral role in how the tack room is currently organized?
Yeah, so when I first started, we had our tack room in what's now our storage
Oh,
area.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that used to be the tack room. And it's a small room, like I'd say it's 10 by 12 probably. And we were a lot smaller program, obviously 10 years ago, 15 years ago than we are now, but it just was by the time you get, I mean, everybody knows this, by the time you get saddle racks coming off the wall and you have 2 or 3 volunteers trying to work in there and move around, it was really just too crowded. They didn't have the space to do what they needed to do. And so at that point is when this is probably a couple years after I started, we determined that we needed a bigger tack room. So we went ahead and we took 2 stalls and eliminated the stall space. um, our facility person framed in a floor and just has a plywood floor, and then we framed in um, the walls and the
Mm-hmm.
ceiling. And so now it's 12 by 24, and that gives us a lot more space.
Mm-hmm.
To work in there. So our horse team has a little corner in there that we call the conditioning closet, and that's where they keep things that they use for training or conditioning the horses that aren't used for everyday sessions. So things like long lines, we have an Equicore system, a beamer blanket, those kinds of things that kind of get stored in there, and then
Mm-hmm.
anything else the horse team needs that's extra. So like they've got a pair of like shoe pullers, they've got like blanket tags, things like
Yeah.
that they need for organizational stuff that we don't need access to every day. Um, so when we did that is when we went to numbering our saddles. So our saddles are all numbered 1 through 15 or whatever, however many, both for English and Western. So we have E1, E2, E3, E4, and they're labeled according to size. So
Mm-hmm.
E1 is our smallest English saddle, E15 is our largest English saddle from a seat size for the rider standpoint.
Yeah.
Same thing goes with Western. And then we have 3 rows of saddles. The third row is a little bit higher. And so those are all of our lighter English saddles. So that's easy for people to lift up. And we're not trying to lift heavy Western saddles up high.
Do you know how many saddles we have off the top of your head?
It flexes a little bit because every time we do saddle fit, if we have something that doesn't fit, then we pull it out and we put it over in our EQ tack room. But usually I would say somewhere between 28 and 32 is where we're usually about at.
Is that kind of a sweet spot for like when we do saddle fit? This is kind of off topic, but when we do saddle fit, sometimes we have horses that fit lots of saddles and sometimes we have horses that fit one. You know what I mean? Like over the years, have we found that that's kind of a sweet spot for our herd size?
I think so. So we on average have around 18 to 20 riding horses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that seems to work pretty well. Like it's not very often we have a horse that doesn't fit something that's in
Yeah.
our tack room, but it does happen occasionally. And so that's why we keep some of those saddles that we have that we feel are nice. They're in good repair. We like the saddle, but they may not fit a horse this time.
Today, yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep them kind of in our like spare EQ tack room. And so then if we get a horse that doesn't have anything, then we can come over to the EQ tack room and kind of say, okay, these are the 4 saddles that didn't fit anybody last time. Let's try that and see if it
Yeah.
fits this horse.
Because all the saddles fit EQ.
All the saddles fit EQ. EQ has never had a sore back.
EQ is our equisizer for anyone who's listening. Shout out to Equisizer.
Yeah, so that's kind of I would say that is a sweet spot for us, but it is a lot of saddles. We also try not to keep saddles in there that don't fit just from a convenience standpoint.
Right.
Like,
Why have them in there?
yeah, there's no need for clutter. So if we have a saddle that for some reason people aren't using. So the last time we did saddle fit, we had what was our E4 saddle fit a lot of horses. Like it probably fit 7 or 8 horses, but every time we walk in the tack room, it's covered in dust. And then we went to saddle fit it, and it's got like a little bit of like, kind of moldy starting on, and
Yeah,
it's just covered in dust. And so we just got rid of it because
you're
clearly
not
none of
gonna
the,
use it.
yeah,
Yeah.
none of the instructors or therapists liked it for some reason, whether that
Mhm.
be from the seat shape or
Mhm.
how it sits their participant. But even though it fit horses, they weren't using it. So we just went ahead and got rid of that one because it's hard to keep it organized and not cluttered.
Mhm.
And so eliminating things that aren't getting used if you have an extra space to store it is super helpful.
And do you think that's important from a programming standpoint, having an organized tack room that has just the stuff you need?
Yeah. Um, I think it just goes down to logistics. Obviously, when we're running a session, it's busy. Like
Mhm.
we've got how many horses going in and out and volunteers coming in and out. And so anytime we have extra things that can add to the clutter or to the confusion of what's happening, I think that makes it harder.
Mhm.
Um, so I think just making sure that we minimize that as much as possible is
Mhm.
helpful, especially I know a lot of programs have volunteers that don't have a lot of horse experience.
Right.
So especially if you've got somebody that's maybe a new tacker, they just went through their tacker training. Not only did they have to learn how to tack a horse safely, but now they're having to learn the organization systems of the tack room,
Mhm.
plus read the board and do all of those things. So the more we can simplify that, the easier it's going to be for them.
And I think it's easier for us. I mean, even if we were a small program, I still would appreciate like a numbering system or a
Hmm.
labeling system because it's so much easier for, like you said, those new tackers or people who are newer to us to go in and find the W4
Hmm.
instead of the, you
Medium
know,
Western.
yeah,
Yeah.
the medium barrel saddle with the high,
Yeah.
whatever, cantle. Like it's that just makes that process easier and more user friendly for our volunteers, and they feel more confident in their skills and in their want to be here, I think.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Killian Insurance Agency. Killian Insurance Agency proudly serves the EAS and EAP communities, offering insurance solutions tailored to your unique needs. They provide coverage for therapy horses, equipment, camps, events, and facilities while addressing the specific liability concerns of your programs. Whether you operate an EAS center, provide EAP services, or manage a ranch or farm without these programs, they're here to protect your work. If you're new to the EAS or EAP industry, they can guide you through the coverage process. Contact Killian Insurance Agency today to discuss how they can help safeguard your critical impact that you make on individuals and communities. Find them at www.farmequineinsurance.com or at the link in the show notes. Okay, so do we store our saddles with stirrups on?
Yes and no. So our Western saddles get stored with stirrups on for the most part, as long as nobody needs those stirrups. So, um, if we've got a couple pairs of Western peacock stirrups, but sometimes we'll get pulled off of a saddle to move to a different saddle.
Mm.
So it just depends on where those are needed. Do not store our English saddles with stirrups on. So our English saddles get totally deconstructed after their lesson. So if there's a breast collar, it comes off. If there's a cinch or girth, it comes, obviously there's a cinch or girth, it comes off.
Yeah.
The stirrups come off and those all get put away. And so it's just the saddle that gets stored. Like that, because what we found is we might have the E5 saddle and it might fit our pony and it might fit our big warm blood.
Mm-hmm.
And so having the ability to choose which girth works best, and we have
Mm.
all of our girths labeled too. So for the English ones, they're labeled like um, DS or DM for dressage small or dressage medium, and then
Mm-hmm.
we've got ESEXL, so E small or E extra large.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can put that on our board as well. So
Yeah.
if they're using a dressage saddle, it's going to say DM, or if they're using a jumper saddle, it might say EXL, or it might be an ES depending on which
Right.
horse is getting used for. And then same thing goes for our stirrups. So we might have a participant who fits in a 16-inch English saddle that's 6 foot tall, and we
Mm-hmm.
might have a rider that fits in a 16-inch English saddle that's 4 foot tall. You know, it just
Right.
really just depends. That's probably an exaggeration, but it really just depends on the person's body type. So, we store our stirrups separately too, so that the therapist or instructor can choose which type of leather and length of leather is most appropriate for their
Yeah.
participant.
I just don't know that it's super practical to have, all stirrups that are the exact same that fit all sizes of your participants. That's just not something that's realistic for us in our program because of the breadth of, participants that we serve
Hmm.
and the variety of, shapes and sizes. But also, just from we have to have so many pairs
Hmm.
of stirrups that it just doesn't make sense to purchase all of those. We take some, if it's really good used tack, we take that on donation. And if they're short stirrups, great. We'll use
Hmm.
them for our short participants and we label those, and all of our English stirrups are labeled too. And we label those with colors.
Hmm.
So that's nice. So you know that you go in and you don't have to say shorter English stirrups. You go in and you know that it's, the ones marked with red tape, red English stirrups, and they're, 4 and 5 from the bottom
Hmm.
on, left and right or whatever it is. So that makes our lives a little bit easier and we can customize that, which I appreciate from a therapist standpoint. Speaking of customization, what other kinds of like tack accessories do we have in the tack room?
So, from a horse functionality standpoint, we have breast collars, we have riser pads, we have a couple horses that use different types of half pads, different kinds of grippy
Hmm.
materials. So we have like some Dyson kind of stuff that we use for sometimes, or we've got we call them the blue gel sticky pads. I can't think of what the name is. We could link it in the
Yeah.
show notes because they're pretty handy to have, and they're actually meant for wrapping legs to keep a leg wrap up, but they're super sticky and they don't interfere with your saddle fit.
Hmm.
And so if you've got like a little halflinger that doesn't have any withers, it works really well to help keep your saddle a little bit more centered. So we've got those. We have our shims. So we have a full shim system that we use for our Western saddles that are stored in there. And then from a participant standpoint, we have a lot of different adaptive tech as well. So we
Hmm.
have, I think probably one of the most used pieces is what we call our black bar.
Hmm.
So that's from Freedom Rider, and it is a just a square handle that goes underneath of the flaps of your English saddle, and it attaches to the billets, and it just provides a place for our participants to be able to like have a support in front of them.
Hmm.
And it's really nice because you can use it on all kinds of saddles. It's not like it gets attached to one saddle and that's the only saddle it can be used with. So it allows us to still use saddles that fit our horses really well and participants really well, but have that flexibility if we have a participant that needs that support. We have different kinds of like seat saver type things. So
Hmm.
like wool or fleece, yeah,
Sheepskin. Hmm.
sheepskin kind of things. We've got different types of reins, like
Yeah.
ladder reins and handle reins.
Hmm.
And then
Our
what else?
singles.
Sursingles. Yeah, we've got several different types of sursingles, just flat sursingles. We have an anti-cast sursingle. We have two handled sursingles. Um,
All
what
kinds of
else?
stuff.
Yeah.
Come join us in Gretna, Nebraska for a hands-on EAS workshop March 14th through the 16th. As the EAS industry continues to expand and diversify, it is of utmost importance to keep the needs of our equine partners a priority. Get a comprehensive look at all aspects of successful equine welfare, including appropriate equine selection, proper training, conditioning, and integration into programming, including appropriate workload management and effective handling techniques. Learn how to do practical saddle fit for EAS, set weight limits for your horses, and so much more. Equine welfare strategies are hard to learn while sitting in a desk at a regular conference. We believe in the power of hands on practice with equine skills in a collaborative environment where we can learn from each other. Attendees should expect a combination of hands on experience, classroom based education, and individualized coaching to help solidify the content. Get the entire 2.5 days for just $150. Discounts available for virtual and audit only positions, or apply for a scholarship. If you're a member of our exclusive club at Patreon, make sure to use your additional $25 discount code. To register and get all the details, head over to hetrauniversity.org or click the link in the show notes below. We hope to see you in Gretna, Nebraska this spring. So we're going to do a little tack room tour on social media. If you haven't followed us yet on Facebook, Hetra University has our very own Facebook page now.
Exciting.
So go over and like it because it's going to cover everything from the podcast to webinars, education, all that stuff. So just go to Facebook and search Hetra University, and we're going to do a little video tour of our tack room and show you some of these things. I'm also going to be sharing on social media just some pictures of things that we use that are really helpful, like the tags we use for our
Mhm.
saddles. Not rocket science, just, little plastic
Yeah.
deals that we use that work really well, and some other types of labeling things. We label our horses' halters,
Mhm.
their bridles. I mean, everything in our tack room pretty much has a label. And so we'll share some of our resources that we use for that if it's helpful to you. Everybody has a different system that works for them and works for their volunteers. Yeah. Do you have any tips for maybe smaller centers that aren't working with, quite as much tack? May have fewer horses to stay organized, but on a smaller scale.
Um, I I think I think all of the things that we do are pretty applicable to centers of all size. So
Hmm.
I really like the labeling the saddles with numbers. So
Hmm.
even if you have 5 saddles, labeling them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5
Hmm.
is helpful. Then, like you said, trying to say, go grab me the Crates Western saddle. It's a 16-inch seat and it's got basket weave on it. You can say,
Hmm.
go grab me saddle 5. And that
Right.
makes it really easy to communicate exactly what your needs are. So I love the numbering system. And I think as much as you can have customizable,
Mm.
but also labeling that. So like we do pull our English saddles apart and having that ability to grab a couple different sizes of English girths or stirrups. And then I think labeling your horse's things that are theirs.
Yeah.
So if Sally has her own bridle, make sure it's got Sally's name on it.
Hmm.
And then also where it hangs on the wall should say Sally. And so Sally's bridle's hanging on Sally's hook. And when it comes
Hmm.
off of Sally and somebody inevitably forgets to put it away, we're not walking around going, "Whose bridle is this?" It says Sally on the
Right.
bridle.
And that's helpful too for volunteers to help us. Not that at Hetra, just for fun, we'll tell you guys a policy of ours. Our staff are the only people in our barn that bridle and unbridle our horses.
Mhm.
Just because that takes a level of training and some horses are easier to bridle than others. But it allows volunteers to help us prepare ahead of time. So, like if I'm going into a lesson where I know I need Sally's bridle, someone who is not a staff, someone who's volunteer can go and grab her bridle and hang it on her stall, and it's right there and ready for me to grab and go. Same thing if, people might not be certified as tackers yet.
Mhm.
Even if they're groomers or even if they're sidewalkers, they can go to the barn manager and say, how can I help? And they can
Mhm.
say, you know what, if you could just take E2 to Sally's stall and hang it on her saddle rack, that would be great because then I can run down there and tack her or whatever. So it just opens up, I think, opportunity for more people to help you and help your barn stay more efficient too.
One other thing you might show, Katie, when you do that video portion is how we do have saddle racks on every horse's stall.
That is super
So
nice.
it makes it really convenient as our volunteers go to get tack set out for the day, that when we go to Sally's stall,
Hmm.
her 4 o'clock saddle is all put together, assembled, and it's hanging on her stall on a
Hmm.
saddle rack that's on her stall, so that you're not trying to have 5 setups in the tack room and everybody's cluttered over the top of each other. It
Hmm.
all gets put together and then gets put on Sally's stall.
Yeah. And our barn managers they all have their funny little like quirks and like things that they do to help their back barn run really well. So like, like the Wednesday night crew, kind of runs on the same sort of thing. And they have these little magnets that go on the stall and they say, this saddle needs to go to Jim at
Yeah, 6
7
o'clock.
or whatever, so that they don't have to recreate the wheel every
Mhm,
time. So it's kind of funny to see how volunteers will adapt and make their
mhm.
lives easier, no matter what process you put in place. So it's always good to ask your volunteers what works, best for them if you don't have a system, and
Yeah,
maybe you guys can come up with something together.
yeah, and that was a system, I think, going back to just kinda some general program management stuff, um, like, that was something we didn't come up with. Our
Hmm.
volunteers came up with it on their own, and they are still working within their training and their system and
Yeah.
the things we've asked them to do, but, that's one thing one of our barn leaders came up with is she got these magnet they're basically magnetic Post-it notes,
Yeah.
like, and they magnet to the front of the stall, and it works really well. I think all
Mhm.
the shifts use them now, where it says like this saddle to Jim at 6 o'clock, or it'll say green stirrups to Jenny at 4 o'clock. And so
Mm.
they know, as whoever pulls that saddle off that horse sees that note as they put it back, and they go, okay, this saddle needs to get moved down to so and so. And it works really well.
Yeah, then it's ready and they saddle and off they go. So we do lessons on the hour, and then our back barn team has 30 minutes to flip horses, flip tack, and then get them back out for the next lesson. So that efficiency and time matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, we are going to go head over to the tack room and do a video tour for you guys. So head over to Hetra University on Facebook to check that out. You might see something you like, and we hope to see you over there. Thanks, Shelby.
Thanks, Katie.
That's all for today, but until the next episode launches, scroll down to the show notes and click on the link to get plugged in with us on Facebook, Instagram, or our exclusive educational club at Patreon. This podcast is presented by Hetra University, the educational arm of Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy in Gretna, Nebraska. Hetra University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to the EAS community. Check out all the Hetra University has to offer at www.hetrauniversity.org.